Senators are concerned about the legislation. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky says the bill does not go far enough to repeal the Affordable Care Act. He met with President Trump yesterday to discuss it. He tweeted the president is, quote, open to making the bill better. Is Senate leadership? Senator Paul is with us now from Capitol Hill. Senator, good morning.
Good morning.
So when you say is Senate leadership, you're talking about Mitch McConnell, I assume. I mean, what does Mitch McConnell have to do to make a bill that you don't think, as you have said, is Obama light?
Well, I think they've done a lot to placate moderates. They've done a lot to placate those who want to keep parts of Obamacare. They've kept most of the Obamacare subsidies. They actually keep the Medicaid expansion forever. Eventually, the states have to pay the traditional historical rate for it, but they've actually kept the Medicaid expansion of Obamacare. We've kept 10 of the 12 regulations. So for those of us who said, well, we promised to repeal the whole thing, and for those of us who believe that the regulations are part of the reason why the premiums are rising so fast for so many people, we think you have to repeal the regulations if you want to bring down prices for people.
So when you talked to President Trump, did he seem to understand that?
You know, I think he's sympathetic to the argument, and I think he wants to get the bill through, and he thinks it's important for all of us and for the country that we repeal Obamacare. But I guess I tried to make sure that he understood that many of us don't think the current bill is repeal. And so, you know, we voted 60 times to repeal it, all of it, or as much as we thought we could repeal, but we repealed quite a bit of it 60 times, and here we are now actually keeping quite a bit of it.
I mean, there are those who are arguing, Senator, as you well know from being there, that what you're trying to do is achieve tax reform within health care. And you eliminate the tax reform and do that somewhere else in tax reform legislation, you could agree on health care.
Well, I would say that if you get rid of the taxes but keep the spending, that's not very honest. In fact, that was a little bit of the dishonesty of the whole approach from the beginning. But right now, you're right. We do primarily get rid of the taxes, but we keep the Medicaid expansion. But where we don't have a real honest debate is we have still people squawking that we're not keeping enough Medicaid expansion, when in fact we keep the Medicaid expansion for 7 years. We let the expansion states continue to expand. And it never has been really an honest accounting with Medicaid. Our government, if you look at our budget, we're $500 billion in the hole. We spend $500 billion more than comes in. Now, they play games with the baseline and say, oh, this is saving money. Nobody believes this is saving money. They're creating a brand new insurance bailout fund of $130 billion. There's no way that is paid for with savings. I think it's funny Washington math.
Senator, we heard Mitch McConnell suggest recently that it might get to the point of gasp sitting down with Democrats if the Republicans can't get on the same page. Do you see that happening?
Actually, I think once we can repeal the things that Democrats would never repeal, we should sit down with Democrats. Democrats are never going to repeal any taxes or any regulations on anything. And frankly, that's what separates us as parties. But once we repeal the taxes, regulations, and try to repeal as much as we can, it's still not going to be completely fixed. We should sit down with Democrats. And many of the ideas that I've had for buying groups, allowing people to associate together collectively to bring down prices, I think some of those, I've talked to many Democrats who are open to that idea.
In Ohio, for example, the governor came to rally to get and raise the case about Medicaid expansion with his own senator, Rob Portman. Isn't Kentucky one of the largest recipients of Medicaid expansion?
They are, and what I've said all along is if in Kentucky we want to keep the Medicaid expansion, we should just be honest. We could pay for it if we doubled the state income tax and doubled the sales tax. But then what we would do is we'd be honest legislators and we'd be saying, you know what, there are some trade-offs. If we double our income tax to 12%, Tennessee has 0. Maybe we're going to lose some business. Instead, what all people in government do, and this is Republicans and Democrats, they punt the question. They say, oh, the states can't afford it, so we're going to send it to the federal government. They have a printing press. But that's not really honest. We're $20 trillion in the hole. Yeah. We can't sustain the entitlements before Medicaid expansion. So we should be honest, and we should either say, you got to raise taxes if you want to provide all this extra health care.
You gave an interesting analogy last night on TV comparing it to kidney stones, that sometimes you got to just pass it. Now, I've never had those, knock on wood, but I hear they're quite painful. Did you think that it would be this painful for you? Did you think this process would be this painful?
Well, I have to give credit to my friend Representative Thomas Massey, who came up with the analogy, but I do think it's pretty accurate. You know, pass it, just be done with it. But that shouldn't be the way we look at health care. It should be very much a studied issue. And actually, the more we study it, as someone said, the more complicated it appears. But that's the other problem with this. And I did tell anybody who will listen, you shouldn't overpromise that you can fix health care. Health care was broken before Obamacare.
That's the very problem you face, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it was broken. It was broken before Obamacare. I don't think Obamacare fixed it, but it's still going to be broken after this Republican bill, mainly because there's not a marketplace. The consumer doesn't make decisions based on price. Until you connect the consumer to the price, until you have real competition in capitalism, the marketplace will still be broken.
But isn't that the political problem? You promised for 7 years you would either replace or reform Obamacare, and you can't do it because of divisions within the Republican Party, and now you've got to go to the voters in 2018, perhaps not having either reformed or replaced.
Yeah, I think you could make two sections of the Republican Party and the independents unhappy. Ones who said you promised to repeal it and you really didn't, and then also people who just want the premiums to go down and you make these big promises for premiums to go down. And I fully expect, I think there's a 99.9% chance premiums don't go down. I mean, a success would be that they go up less slowly. So people have to realize they've gone up 105% in the last 6 years, but they were rising before Obamacare also.
All right.
To be fair, healthcare has been broken a long time.
All right, Senator Paul, we thank you for taking the time this morning.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Music legend, that's Jimmy Iovine, began his career by